Hey everyone, good morning. Just finishing up breakfast, trying to get an early start to beat the heat for today's adventure. We'll also be playing around with some fun gadgets, including the GMC Geiger counter, as well as the RadiaCode pocket scintillator. So we're gonna have a lot of fun today with these, and we're gonna just pack light. So let's go. And of course, we'll be taking along our trusty rockhound too. All right, girl, let's go. Oh, wow. Yep.
Topographic. So now we have a rock. Right behind us, classic red bed.
Welcome back to Let's Go Geo, everyone. I'm your Geo Guide, Heather, and today we are in Utah, in the western United States, so that we can take a tour of the very interesting and colorful material you see behind me. These rocks are over 100 million years old, from the Mesozoic era. And this stuff is characteristic of the late Jurassic Morrison Formation, which is about 163 to 145 million years ago. And in this region, also capped by the slightly younger Cretaceous Cedar Mountain Formation. And this stuff is primarily made of sedimentary rocks, like sandstones and conglomerates that represent ancient riverbeds or paleochannels. And variegated mudstones, which are paleosols or ancient soils. And these consist of clays, organic material, and volcanic ash that was raining down over this area. This stuff consists of this characteristic popcorn texture, which results from shrinking and swelling in wet-dry cycles. The iconic colorful banding patterns of the Morrison give it this artistically appealing look. These banding patterns actually result because the materials originally laid down as those red and purples when oxidized, but when reduced fluids move through, it gives us the whites and greens. We'll learn more soon today about why this moving water is so important to our story.
Paleosols, like modern soils, were formed during times of relatively slow or no accumulation of sediment. During these times, the land surface and near subsurface were exposed to chemical and physical weathering processes. Soil forming, or pedogenic processes, can give important clues to what the climate and other environmental conditions were like during their formation. We can use this information to create a more holistic understanding of the ancient world for us to peer back upon.
Wow, this is a modern-day horsetail, a living fossil from the Jurassic. Horsetails were common features of the Morrison landscape, but much bigger. In fact, many aspects of the climate and the ecosystem from the Morrison time were very different than today. The Morrison Formation represents inland wetland environments, riverine, lacustrine, palustrine. These large rivers dominated the landscape, flowing from adjacent highlands, surrounded by a savanna, and with a unique ancient plant assemblage. It's yielded numerous fossilized ferns, cycads, ginkgos, horsetails of course, and large evergreen trees. These plants indicate a much warmer and humid climate than we have today. By measuring their diameters and comparing them to modern day relatives, scientists have determined that some of these trees were as large as the tallest redwood trees today. In fact, another large section of these trees was recently discovered in northern Utah. It was called the Manuel log, and it joins dozens of other huge tree stump specimens that have been found. Rivers cut channels that left behind sandstone, and lakes dotted the landscape to leave behind limestones, and nearby volcanoes spewed ash onto the landscape, forming into bentonite clays that make the characteristic slickness and that popcorn texture. Scientists have also found evidence of turtles, salamanders, frogs, crocodilians, and even small mammals. And of course, this landscape was dominated by the dinosaurs, massive sauropods, and smaller ornithischian dinosaurs, Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, and Stegosaurus, browsed plants while trying to avoid the predatory theropod dinosaurs like Allosaurus. The dinosaurs lived on Earth for about 170 million years. And for a fun perspective on that, remember, not all dinosaurs lived together at once. This is a common misconception about the dinosaurs' past, but actually, the distance between Stegosaurus from around the late Jurassic, about 150 million years ago, and T-Rex, which is late Cretaceous, about 60-some million years ago, is about 80 million years apart. Yeah, Stegosaurus was long gone 80 million years before T-Rex even came on the stage. That means T-Rex lived closer to humans than to Stegosaurus. Another interesting perspective about the vast amount of time from this period is to consider that this is the time before flowering plants, grasses, and even bees and butterflies existed. The very first mammals maybe appeared on Earth some 225 million years ago, but really they didn't diversify into the mammals we know today until starting around like 80 to 60 million years ago into the Cenozoic. As for me, humans, well, primates evolved some 50 million years ago. Chimps and humans diverged about 6 million years ago, and humans of the genus Homo split about 2 million years ago from our common ancestor Australopithecus. And my rockhound companion here, well, domesticated dog Canis familiaris, she probably split from her common ancestor some 30 to 40,000 years ago. So yeah, here in the Jurassic, we didn't even exist yet.
Well, that was an interesting journey back in time, but now we're going to take a look at what was left behind from those deposits and those rock layers. And actually, there's something really cool that I found out here, so I can hike back so I can show you guys this today. And while we're walking over, I want to make sure to shout out to my patrons out there. You guys really support this project, and this project means a lot to me. I had this idea that virtual experiences would be awesome to bring to people because I knew that the hands-on and being in the field just taught us so much more, and it makes for a fun adventure. There's so many cool things to see out here. So I created this idea for this project, and now it's actually starting to move along. It's really exciting, and I love that my patrons are part of this journey. So thank you guys so much. And if you want to also support the Let's Go Geo project that I'm creating, you can do that on Patreon. Patreon's one great way to do that. I'll put the link in the description. And on Patreon, in addition to supporting the project and keeping me going, you also get access to some exclusive content that only patrons see. So anyway, I think we are getting a little closer. I got to navigate through these rocks, and then I get to show you guys something really cool that's found in these rock units.
Now, the dinosaurs may be long gone, but they certainly left traces of their existence behind in the form of their bones. And the bones of the Morrison Formation are particularly interesting because they tend to be pretty spicy. I mean, they're radioactive. Let's see what this one does. Let's see what the Geiger counter does. Cool. Yep, we definitely found a radioactive one. But why does The fossil wood and bones of the Morrison Formation, as well as some others, tend to be radioactive like this. To answer this, we'll need to consider the life of this bone and how it got where it is today. Whoever left this bone behind probably died somewhere on the floodplain, maybe on a mud flat near a river.
This environment would have included sediments from fine muds and clays, along with volcanic ash from nearby volcanoes, and sand grains, and chunks of hard material like shells, and this is all called detritus. Detritus is what gets turned into sedimentary rocks, clastic or detrital sedimentary rocks specifically. Fine muds and clays turn into mudstones, and sand grains turn into sandstones.
In some ways, it's that simple. But of course, it's not that simple.
This material begins its journey toward becoming a rock when it gets weathered, eroded, transported, and deposited somewhere. Then the real fun starts. The material then undergoes some important processes, like lithification, the process that begins to turn sediments and material into a real rock. Then there's compaction, when the weight of shallow burial causes grains of material to pack tightly and reduce pore space, squeezing out water content. Water continues to move through any open pore space and deposits new material through precipitation, namely calcium carbonate, silica, and oxides. And this leads to cementation, when the grains get glued together. Then there are these post-depositional processes that can alter the rock over its millions of years of existence. This can include the action of water, bacteria, and further compaction. Altogether, the term diagenesis refers to the overarching physical and chemical processes that turn detritus into a sedimentary rock. It includes more serious alterations from burial and high temperatures and pressures, but not to the extent of true metamorphism.
But our bone was also trapped in these rocks this whole time. So what happened to it?
Bones in the Morrison Formation are often found disarticulated or separated from one another, and sometimes with tooth marks. This information indicates that the dead animals sat around for some time to be scavenged upon and moved around. The animals may have been coming to the river for nourishment, but found little reprieve and died. Drought is indicated as a cause for death for some by the presence of a certain type of clam. This type of clam, a unionate clam, happens to require a permanent source of moving freshwater to survive. Clam fossils are found in river sediments where they can get buried alive. When this happens, we'd expect them to be found as closed shells. However, if no water is present, the clams will die with their shells open. These discoveries have revealed at least 3 drought episodes during which much of the river may have dried up. Dinosaurs and the other organisms, like elephants in modern wetlands, would have perished by the river, likely in regions like river bends and sandbars. These sections of rivers are known to catch debris. These are spots where heavy minerals can accumulate. This is why gold panners prospect there. The protruding bones of the dead animal probably caught much debris, altering the river flows
And ultimately increasing the chance of burial and fossilization over time.
There are lots of different forms of fossilization, but there are 2 important types that represent Morrison bone and wood fossils, and these are permineralization and replacement. In permineralization, water percolates through the sands. Buried in the sand and mud were those dinosaur bones. Bones are porous or full of tiny holes. So the bones acted like a sponge, absorbing water along with whatever the water carried, which could be sediment, bacteria, dissolved minerals, and some of these items were deposited onto and within the bone pores as the water flowed through. Replacement, on the other hand, is when the original hard material of bone or wood gets replaced by new minerals. Overall, there's 3 types of permineralization and replacement based on the mineral composition. There's pyritization, which is when permineralization and replacement processes involve pyrite, or an iron sulfide. There's silicification, which is the infilling of pore spaces or replacement with silica. And there's carbonate mineralization, which is when calcium carbonate, mineralization occurs in the bone fossils. Let's imagine our bone sitting in that spot where the animal died, getting buried like we talked about. And as the pores filled with minerals, bacteria ate away at the bones, producing calcium carbonate as a byproduct. The calcium carbonate formed a hard shell that entombed the bacteria and permeated the organic bone cells. With time, the bones became fully permeated with minerals, such as the carbonates, silica, or even others, hence the name permineralization. Of course, you'll also hear people use the term petrified, which literally means to turn to stone. And so our dino bones and tree limbs underwent millions of years of burial and alterations, accompanying the large-scale continental changes related to the end of the breakup of Pangaea. One major event included the rising of the Rocky Mountains. Regional uplift of the Colorado Plateau began 37 million years ago. The faulting and crumpling and humping of the land into anticlines. Deposition ceased,
and then erosion eventually exposed a bone to be perplexed upon by a new bipedal being in the age of the mammals. So now for that curious radioactivity.
Groundwater can carry many different minerals, from the calcium carbonate and silica we just talked about to uranium. Uranium gets picked up by water passing through uranium-bearing rocks, typically igneous rocks like granites and ash-rich deposits. Uranium oxide is an oxidized state of uranium, and it's very soluble in water, or it dissolves readily in water. So you can get a decent amount of uranium oxide dissolved in groundwater. When this groundwater moves through the ground, it encounters soil and porous rock, and it might also interact with organic content, like bones or wood. At this point, it will deposit in these cavities and accumulate in larger amounts than what would be seen in the background material. So why does it deposit there specifically? Well, organic matter has a profound impact on uranium cycling and limits or promotes the mobility of uranium via binding, reduction, or complexation. Basically, organic material is a powerful reductant or reducing agent, which is a chemical substance that donates electrons during redox. And this reduces the uranium species, or the uranium ions carried in groundwater. The reduced uranium species has a smaller solubility, therefore it becomes saturated more readily and comes out of solution or precipitates in the bone or wood as an authigenic mineral.
And as you might have already guessed, yes, this region was a hot spot for uranium mining historically. Uranium gets trapped in lenses in the sandstone and, of course, around the organic material. In fact, in the 50s, during the uranium mining booms, there was a wood sample that was valued at over $100,000 based on its uranium content. The now compacted and well-cemented sandstones and conglomerates of those paleochannels tend to be more resistant than, say, the mudstones and shales of the floodplains. The floodplain deposits, therefore, tend to erode more rapidly than those sandstones and conglomerates. The exhumed paleochannels tend to express themselves as ridges and buttes, topographically higher than the surrounding landscape. This type of geomorphic phenomenon is referred to as inverted topography. What was previously the lowest part of the ancient landscape is now the highest. And this inverted topography of the Morrison and Cedar Mountain formations is actually strikingly similar to features we find on Mars. Well, it's getting pretty toasty out here, so now let's head back to camp and take a look at this a little further. All right, back at camp, and I have these two pieces of permineralized wood to show you, and they really demonstrate some of the things we've been talking about. So check this out. This is a piece that you can see a knot and a lot of features that should be pretty obvious that that is a piece of wood. And then there's also this piece. So it's interesting to contrast the two types of fossils that we have here, and just check those out. And then I want to show you something else that's pretty cool when it comes to these. One more cool thing from today's adventure. I left the RadiaCode sit on that fossil bone fragment for a while so we could get the spectrogram results, and this is what it showed. So this is what you get when you run the RadiaCode and you go to the spectrograph features, one of the coolest things about the RadiaCode. And if we analyze the graph, we can clearly see that it confirms that we have uranium in this piece, and uranium byproducts are present in our radioactive dinosaur bone. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, so wood, bones, all of this organic stuff in certain formations, as well as some more recent Cenozoic formations too. So it's not just the Jurassic Morrison. There are some bones and fragments from Eocene and Cenozoic material as well. But Jurassic dinosaur bones and Jurassic wood is very well known for being radioactive, and sometimes, kind of like we saw today, pretty hot stuff. So that's our adventure for today in the Jurassic. Going back to the Jurassic today, it was a whole lot of fun. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. If you want to support the Let's Go Geo project, well, there's lots of ways you can do that. I am working hard to bring more and more content every day on lots of different topics, and I always do it in this style, on these virtual field adventures. I also do some other content here as well, where I show hand samples and minerals and talk about rock hounding tips and things like that. So if you're into that, check out some of the other videos and content here as well. I try to organize them in playlists. But you can support this project and keep me going a number of ways. I do have a Let's Go Geo Facebook page, and you can see pictures on Instagram. You can see more of our rockhound dog here. And you can also find me on Patreon. I've set up a Patreon and I have some extra content there. If you want to tap into that exclusive Let's Go Geo content, then just check that out. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next adventure here at Let's Go Geo. Hope you'll join me. Bye.